think we are at the time to get started. We are so excited. I know I am. I'm going to kick us off by introducing our first speaker, who is Dr. Karen Schmidt. She is the Associate Director of Behavioral Mental Health at Marin Community Clinics. She is a clinical psychologist specializing in the treatment of childhood trauma and has 20 plus years of experience working with children and families. She has been a lead clinician on multiple grants addressing trauma and ACEs, which you might learn about tonight, in healthcare settings over the past 8 years in her recent role at MCC. Prior to MCC, she was the Director of Clinical Services at UCSF Child and Adolescent Services and has been an appointed member of the Marin Child Care Commission. She was recently recognized as one of the first Fives 2024, I'm so sorry, I'm too excited apparently, first Fives 2024 champions for children. And Dr. Schmidt was born and raised in Marin, so she knows our community very well and is currently raising her 2 teenagers here. We're so excited to have her. And with that, I'll pass it over to Dr. Schmidt.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to share my screen here, so bear with me on my technical skills. All right. Can everybody see that? Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for that introduction. It makes me sound a lot more hoity-toity than I am. But I am a child psychologist, and in my role at MCC, I do have the privilege of working with teenagers from all over Marin. I think I've seen kids from every high school and probably almost every middle school as well. So it's really great to be here in that role. And then also, I am a parent of 2 teenagers myself. So I am in this with you all, and I can tell you all the training in the world does not prepare you when it's your own kids. So tonight, my goal is to just give everyone a little bit of a better understanding of what it is our teens are going through as they develop through adolescence, and some ways for us to be able to respond and support them as best as possible. So first of all, what is adolescence? With our growing research and advances in science, the terminology and the time range for adolescence changes pretty much daily. Whether you look at adolescence as the start of puberty, as we know, puberty has been starting earlier and earlier in our kids, especially our girls. So that could start as young as 9. And then researchers also feel that the end of adolescence is not really until our brains have fully developed. And that is now looking like it's 25. Some new studies are even saying 30, which is kind of crazy to think about, since I would imagine many of us on this call probably had our teenagers before our brains were fully developed. So for the most part, for this talk, I'm really going to be focusing on our middle schooler and high schoolers, but just know that that's a range. And so if you're seeing some of these changes in your 9-year-old, that's why, because this is what's happening. Okay, so what are the major changes that are going on in adolescence? The major first ones are the biological changes, right? We all know our kids are getting taller by the day, their voices are changing, their bodies are changing, and a lot of that is due to hormones. And hormones not only affect their appearance, they affect our sense of identity, our sexuality. A lot of changes might be happening that our kids might not be all that comfortable with or self-conscious about, acne, all those fun things, right? And hormones also can really impact our mood, often quite drastically, and often without a lot of control on our end. Any of you moms out there who might be experiencing perimenopause along with me can know that this is very real, right? I also think it's one of nature's cruelest jokes that they put moms in perimenopause at the same time as kids as teenagers. So one of us needs to be functioning normally right now, right? So those are the major changes hormonally, and then there's also major changes in their brain. This is a huge time of development for brains. And what we know that what happens and what's important for us to know tonight is that the structures of our brain that are around emotions and social and all of that they come online first, and then that's like the limbic system, and I won't get into too much detail, but and then the prefrontal cortex, or our ability to kind of stop and think before we act, that doesn't come on until later. So that is developing through later adolescence. And so what happens is this makes a little bit of a perfect storm, right? Uh, teenagers are more willing to take risks. They are more sensation seeking. They also are more emotionally sensitive because that emotion has gone online before the more cognitive executive functioning has. And then also, we need to talk about the developmental stages of adolescence, right? So during this time, our goals are identity formation and separation and individuation. So what this means is they have to kind of figure out who they are, right? The end of adolescence is adulthood, and that's when you start to know who you are, how you think, what your values are. And it's also when you separate from your parents. So a lot is going on right now, and there's a lot that they have to get through. And the way that teenagers do this is by spending more time with their friends, more time with people other than their parents, because they've had that influence and now they're seeking other influences. They try on different viewpoints, often diametrically opposed to yours, and that's kind of on purpose. They also are doing this all to figure out who they are and what their beliefs are and their values are. And as I said, at the end of all of this, they're supposed to separate from us. And I know that's hard to think about as parents, especially those of us with seniors, but that is their job. And so as they're separating from us, it's normal that there's more tension, there's more arguing between us at this stage because they are testing limits on purpose. They're trying to push us away a little bit because it will make that separation easier. If you're really annoyed by that stinky teenager, it might be a little easier to watch them walk out the door. Not much, but a little. So just know it's normal if that's what's happening right now. Okay. Oh, I don't know if you guys can see this because there's a lot of our heads in the way, but this is just a slide to show you a smattering of what are the typical stressors of adolescence. And I couldn't even get everything on here. You know, there's a million. But the main sort of theme here is there's social pressure, there's academic pressure, there's parental pressure, and then there's exposure to social media, to substances, all the things, right? And then they've got sports where they have to perform. They have jobs where they have to perform. If you just look at this, it's dizzying. And this is just the typical stressors that happen for teenagers. As we all know, there are many of our teenagers who've experienced more significant trauma as well. And that impacts them even more on top of all of these. And speaking of that, we all kind of experience some collective traumas here and are still considering, we're still in them for a lot of this. This is hard, right? You think of all the internal stressors we just talked about, what's happening to their body, what's happening to their brain, then the typical normal external stressors of just being a teenager, and then add in this. And these are just some. Again, there's more. We all know this, right? But these are, as they keep saying, unprecedented times. And our kids are faced with a lot right now. And this point, the COVID, I just want to talk about that a bit. The COVID-19 in the middle, the biggest one, right? Is the pandemic had major effects on our kids. And we don't even know the full effects yet of that. But what we do know is that they affected their social, their development, their academic, and their mental health. Everything was impacted by this. And as all of us on this call know, nobody left COVID unscathed, right? Everybody had an increase in depressive symptoms, anxiety symptoms, and sometimes much worse. As we know from some of the statistics, the suicide rates in our teens went way up as a result of COVID, and our anxiety and depression rates are continuing to rise now. And part of that is because we're in this back to normal, right? Or this new normal. And everybody knows there's nothing normal about this, right? We're still mourning the loss of that normal. And they're mourning the loss of what they missed because they literally missed developmental stages. They missed academic learning. There's all kinds of studies showing that they basically did not learn whatever grade they were in, right? There's a lot of effects that have happened from that that we're still learning about now. And then everyone's been told to go back to school, go back to normal, and do all the things that they were told 2 years ago could kill them. So you can imagine that that comes with it a lot more anxiety, right? Go be in crowds, go touch things, go do things, right? And so we're seeing a lot of an increase now. And all our kids that kind of held it together through the pandemic, now that they're supposed to go back to normal, that's when they're falling apart. And there's a lot more kids that are having trouble going back to school, that are developing more symptoms of obsessive compulsive disorder and eating disorders. And because those are all about trying to control what we can when we're in a situation that we can't control. And the pandemic for sure was something that we couldn't control. And then you add in all these other things, and we can't control any of that stuff either, right? And they're being uh, suspected to that every day, right? This is on the news. This is in their schools. This is everywhere. This stuff is happening, and it's really hard. Okay, I'm going to continue to depress you for a little bit, and then I promise it gets better. Okay, so the connection between stress and mental health. We all know that stress impacts our health and our mental health, right? I don't need to tell you this, and there's plenty of studies that back that up. But for teenagers and what their brains are going through at that moment, like what we talked about earlier, they actually have a stronger reactivity to stress. They are more susceptible to stress because of that emotion part being first. Their self-regulation skills are not fully developed. And so they actually have a more powerful impact from stress than adults do. And then we add on to that trauma, right? We know that trauma affects our functioning, but in kids, it doesn't affect just their functioning in the moment, but it actually affects their development and their brain development. What we know is that there's actually higher levels of cortisol, which is a stress hormone, which then makes you more susceptible to more stress. So basically, if you've had a lot of stress, you're more likely to react stronger to stress in the future, which really doesn't seem fair. Darwin was not working his best in that one, but that's what we know now. And as I said before, the rates of anxiety and depression in our youth are rising. They're rising so much that the Surgeon General recently coined it a youth mental health crisis. So while we're out of the pandemic, we're now in a new crisis. So we really want to be paying attention to the fact that that stress really did overwhelm our kids, as it should. And you guys have been talking about this all year, so I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but I would be remiss to not talk about the connection between mental health and substance use, especially in teens. First of all, substance use is a really effective coping skill, right? There are substances that can help you feel better, that can help you calm down. They work in the moment and they allow you that temporary reprieve of having to think about all the stresses that are going on in your life. So they're a natural thing that people are drawn to, especially when they've been through as much as we're talking about our teens have been through. However, once you use, they tend to actually increase the anxiety and depressive symptoms as that initial effect wears off. And it can actually exacerbate these symptoms rather than help them. So that quick fix in the moment might work, but then the lasting effects are actually worse. And then in some cases, if someone is actually predisposed, like genetically predisposed for something like schizophrenia, we know that increased marijuana use can actually trigger a psychotic break. So there are some real connections in the brain in teens between substances and the development of mental health disorders. So we really want to be aware of that use. Again, I feel like I'm a broken record with this, but the adolescent brains being more susceptible, they're also more susceptible to substances. Interestingly, they tend to actually have less of the negative effects in the beginning of alcohol, which then makes them more susceptible to become addicted later on. And the newer studies are showing that the earlier someone is using a substance, the more likely they are to later develop a substance abuse disorder. So this really is a pivotal time for our kids, and we really want to be wary of their use. Obviously, we'd love to have them not using at all, but certainly be paying attention to, are they using it as a coping skill? Is it getting worse? What are they using it for? And how are they responding to it? Okay, so how in the world do we tell the difference between what is a normal teenager and what is something that might actually be a mental health concern? It's really hard, right? Because pretty much all the symptoms are normal in adolescence, right? They're supposed to be moody, they're supposed to be angry, they get in more fights, they have terrible sleep habits, they have terrible eating habits, right? Their relationships change on a dime, their mood changes on a dime. All of that is normal and developmentally appropriate. And there are certain days when I just have that mantra in my head of it's developmentally appropriate, it's developmentally appropriate, because this is what kids do at this time. But as parents, we want to know, when do we need to be concerned, right? When do we actually need to intervene? And so that really comes down to these three things right here: the severity, the duration, and the change in the normal function. So what do I mean by that? So severity is sort of like a real deepening of the mood, right? A real sadness, a despair, rather than a more of a fleeting sadness or a typical sadness that you're used to seeing in your kid. Stronger mood swings, like a real high high and a real low low. Um, a dominance of one mood over all others, right? They tend to be always sad or always angry, and you're not seeing that joy and happiness pop back in. Anger, right, not commensurate with what's triggering it, right? We see that a lot, where that frustration tolerance goes down and they're getting really angry for something as little as like stubbing a toe, right? Those are when you're telling that that severity has it's more deeper and exaggerated than what we would normally expect their emotional response to be to a particular situation. And then there's the duration. And so that is, how long is this going on, right? Because you can see some real severe mood if, say, your teen just had a breakup, right? We would expect them to actually go through a little bit of despair, feel like the world is ending. That's normal, right? But then we want to be watching for how long is that going on, right? And are they stuck in one feeling for that period of time? Like, are they lying in bed for 2 weeks at a time? Can you not remember the last time they were happy, right? It really, if there's anything that's kind of longer than 2 weeks without a break, that's something that you want to start to pay attention to and be more concerned about. And then the final one is the change in their normal functioning. So if your kid loves soccer and suddenly they don't want to go to their soccer practice, that's a sign. If their friends, who are good friends and you know haven't caused problems with them, are inviting them out and they're saying no, that's a sign. If they're not able to go to school because they're too tired, they're too depressed, they can't get out of bed, that's a sign, right? So when it's impacting their normal functioning, that's when we know we need to be concerned. Because kids can be all over the place, but they still go do all their things and they're still happy when they're with their friends. They just hate us, right? But so when it's happening to that point where the things that they normally like, they don't like anymore, they're not doing, they're not engaging in their normal life, that's when we're concerned. And remember, it's really the three of these all together. At any point, they can have one. But if you're seeing all of these, this would be a time that you definitely want to address it with your kiddo, and that you probably want to seek some help from your pediatrician or another mental health provider. Okay, now the good news. Right? I promised you it wasn't going to be all bad. But now that we know all that they're going through, right, there is a lot of good that's come out of what they're going through. First of all, there is such a thing as a healthy stress level. I don't know if some of you have seen that optimal stress bell curve, but we actually all need a little bit of stress to get us motivated and make us more productive. If there's no stress at all, we all just kind of lie there and do nothing. So there's some stress is good stress. Too much stress is when we have the problem, but we actually don't want no stress. And our kids over these past few years have certainly learned how to use that stress to their advantage. And they got that at an earlier time than maybe some of us did. And then there's more awareness. This, I think, is one of the best things to come out of this. We all went through this together. There's no denying now that these symptoms are real and that people have them and that it doesn't mean you're crazy, right? Because we've all now experienced it. There's no othering going on anymore. There's a lot more people talking about this. There's a lot less stigma about the fact that you're having some of these symptoms. They're talking about it in schools. They have mental health days in schools. They've got wellness centers. They're really focusing on it. Your pediatrician is talking about it. They're actually screening for depression and anxiety and trauma in your pediatric well visits. Not sure if you knew that, but they are. So it's much more out there. We're much more aware of it, and we're much better at catching it sooner because everybody's talking about it. And then because of that awareness, there's also a lot more resources available for people, right? There are more places to get help. It is easier to reach out. So that is all really good. And then the biggest one here, I feel like this should be in hot pink, is resilience, right? I hate the saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but the grain of truth in that is that yes, when we go through hard things and we make it through hard things, we are stronger and we know that we can get through things, and we look towards the future with a lot more confidence and a lot more ability to take on what comes next. Kids are resilient by nature. What they went through in these past 3 years, they are more resilient than any generation before them. And there are going to be so many strengths that come out of this because these kiddos are exposed to more. And I think it's going to have lasting impacts for the positive as well. So I know there's going to be lasting impacts on development and that, but there's also lasting impacts of change and making the world a better place, which is what our teens do. Okay, so how to counteract the effects of stress? This is what we want, right? What do we actually do about it? And the good news is that the research is very clear that most of the things that we know for sure mediate the impact of stress and of trauma are these things right here. And all of these are things that we can do, that we can help our kids do. They're like low-hanging fruit, as they say, right? Sleeping, eating, exercise. That says exercise and time in nature. There's actually a study from Cal that they talk about the effects of locomotion in nature, which I think is such a funny term, but it basically means walking around outside is good for us. When we have fresh air and we look at the trees or the birds, it actually sets off stuff inside of us that actually improves our mood and makes us feel better. So they don't have to run marathons. They just have to walk around the block, and that will help. Obviously, healthy relationships and a sense of connection. And those relationships start at home with us, but it's also helping foster friendships, having them join teams, be involved in things where they have access to connecting and making relationships with other people. Stress reduction skills. All the schools now talk about mindfulness. They have peace corners. They do all kinds of great things where they're teaching our kiddos from kindergarten on stress reduction skills. So that's good. They know this. And then obviously professional help should you need it. As I just said, we've got a lot more resources now. I obviously think everybody should go to therapy, but it's there and that's an option if you need it to help counteract the effects of stress. And now the real meat. What can we as parents do to help? The number one is take care of yourself. If you've ever been on an airplane and they tell you to put your oxygen mask on before your kids, if you are not okay, it's really hard to make sure your kids are okay. So all this stuff on the slide before, apply that to you, right? Definitely take care of yourself. And in the process, not only are you going to be better able to help take care of them, but you're also going to model for them these positive coping skills and these ways to take care of yourself. And along the lines of modeling self-regulation is huge. This is as much for us as for them, right? It's hard. It is hard to keep your cool when they're pushing every button because they know you so well and they know exactly what gets under your skin. And so if and they don't have all of these skills yet, right? They don't actually fully have the self-regulation skills on their own. That's part of our job as parents is to teach them this as they're continuing to grow. They've got a lot, but it's still coming online. And so when we can model how to manage our affect, that can really help them, right? And then the other thing we need to know, though, is that how we manage our affect might not be the same way that they do. And so while we can model that, we also need to remain open to the idea that everyone manages their emotions differently. And so giving our kids options of things that they can do in the moment without judgment in terms of what will work best for them to regulate. So we have, some people use the deep breathing, some people prefer connection like hugs and talking. Some people prefer a physical release. And some people, especially a lot of our teen boys, really kind of need to hit something. And that's okay. And what you want to do is help them find a way to punch something that won't hurt them instead of just saying, no, you can't do that, right? There are ways that people manage their emotions, and we want to make sure that we're open to all of them and that we validate our kids' feelings. I think this is a big one, right? The message here is that all feelings are okay. How we express them can sometimes get us into trouble. So we need to learn some better skills for that. Screaming, I hate you is not going to work when you're in a workplace, right? So learning how to, but that all those emotions are okay and really validating that, because a lot of times parents will say like, oh, don't get so mad, or it's not a big deal. It is a big deal. It is a big deal to them. As we just saw, their brain is really sensitive to emotions. They are feeling emotions stronger than we do. So it is a big deal. It does feel like the end of the world. And so we don't want to invalidate that. Be present. This is a big one. Show up, right? Even though they say they don't care, they do. Go to the games, the performances, pick them up if they need a ride, and then just also be that safe presence in their life. Even if they don't feel like talking to you, they know that you're there. I think a lot of times us as parents of teens feel like they don't need us anymore, like we don't have to be around as much as when they were little. And we're wrong. They actually need us more. They need to know that we're there. They're going to choose when they decide to talk to us. It's not going to be when we're ready and waiting, but they need to know that we are there and available to them. And I know talking to your teen sounds very hard, right? I know, for an example, my son does a lot of grunting and not a lot of talking. Um, and but try to talk to them at times when they're interested in talking. A lot of times, like the car ride, when they're looking at the back of your head, or when they're going to sleep at 11 o'clock at night, that's when some of those best conversations happen. And get to know them, get to know the amazing person your teenager is becoming, because this time in their life, they're thinking about all these different thoughts and ideas, and it's so wonderful to see what comes out of their brains, right? It's nice to see them developing into this individual outside of your values and what they decide to do. And it's an exciting time to get to know them. And then acknowledging and apologizing for mistakes, right? This is a big one because we are going to get in fights. There are going to be disagreements. There are going to be times that we let them down. It's pretty much impossible to make it through parenting teenagers without some sort of rupture, right? I can certainly tell you my kids would say that I have definitely screwed up, right? We do. We're parents. We make mistakes. That's normal. And we're humans. Humans make mistakes. What is actually the most important thing here is not to not make the mistake. It's to apologize and repair the relationship once the mistake is made. Apologize if you overreacted, if you yelled, or if you shared something of theirs that they wanted you to keep in confidence. And then really apologize. Like, you have to mean it. They will see through it if you're not really apologizing. And then use it as an opportunity to model how to take responsibility for your actions, right? And then take it even further. How do we repair that rupture? What do we need to do differently the next time this comes up so that this doesn't happen again and that we learn from this mistake or this argument that we had? And the research shows that actually having this rupture and repair can actually strengthen your relationship, and it actually teaches kids to be more compassionate and more functioning adults. So there's actually something that it's good to have a few of these mistakes, right? Because it actually can then lead to a deepening of your relationship. Creating a village. So this is, it takes a village, right? People used to raise children with everybody around. It was not supposed to be just one or two parents doing this on our own. And kids need a village too, right? Because there are going to be plenty of times when they don't want to talk to you, but they need to talk to somebody. And so you can help make sure that their village includes people that you know are good for them to talk to, that you know will support them and take care of them, right? So this is extended family, this is friends, this is coaches, religious leaders, teachers, all of those. We want a big village for them to be able to fall onto, and we need a big village for us because parenting is hard and we shouldn't be doing this on our own. We need some friends to say, oh my gosh, I really screwed up. What do I do now? And have them help you through it, right? This is, parenting is not for the faint of heart, as they say. And then use the resources that we have available. We're really lucky. The next speakers that are going to talk are going to tell you all about resources that we have here in Marin. This is an amazing community to be a part of, where we do have so many things available for our young people. And use them for them, use them for you. You guys are already ahead of the game. You're on this forum, right? And so look around, see all these other people on this forum. There's your village, right? Like if you see someone that, oh, that's a parent at my kid's school, connect. These people are already seeking out ways to help and to be more engaged as parents, and using amazing resources like this and 9 to 25 that's going to talk next. There's a lot out there. And so use it. All right, that's the end for me. I hope that some of this was helpful for you guys. And I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to talk tonight and for the amazing work that this organization does. It's helping our kids and our parents to lead healthier, happier lives, and I'm privileged to be a part of it. And now these next two speakers are very inspiring, and they are perfect examples of how amazing this next generation is, because they are already changing the world and they're not even adults yet. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Schmidt. I loved this presentation. I think you did such an amazing job of making this approachable and like providing everyone with tips and tricks. And like, I love the idea of having a conversation in the car. Like, I think of all the car rides when my parents drove me to school, and I'm like, oh, we could have had some really interesting conversations then. So thank you so much, Dr. Schmidt. If you have questions for Dr. Schmidt, even our upcoming speakers, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We will be monitoring them. We'll kind of be compiling them so we can feed them to our incredible speakers during Q&A. So please feel free to drop them in at any point during tonight's discussion. And so with that, I'm so excited to introduce our next speakers. We have two incredible interns from Find Your Way, which is a part of Marin 9 to 25. Alex Sumsky and Sophia Rubel are both juniors at Redwood High School. I have to say, go Giants, as a Redwood graduate myself. Marin 9 to 25 is an action-oriented collective of Marin County youth and adults dedicated to realizing positive and equitable outcomes for youth ages 9 to 25. Find Your Way is one of their campaigns. It's a youth-led campaign that shares resources. They're going to show you some incredible things that they've worked on, shares resources and facilitates connections among Marin County youth. And tonight, Alex and Sophia will share their perspectives on mental health, substance use, tell you a little bit more about the Find Your Way resource guide for youth. So with that, I'll pass it over to Alex and Sophia.
Awesome. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex, and I'm a junior at Redwood, and I'm here with Sophia.
Hi, my name is Sophia, like Alex said, and I'm also a junior at Redwood.
Okay, so let's get
Hi, so we're Find Your Way, but really, who are we? Next slide, please. So Find Your Way is a youth wellness program that focuses on providing resources to youth through our printed and digital resource guide that was made for youth by youth. And Find Your Way also offers opportunities for young people to develop and lead projects in the areas of mental health, overdose prevention, education, and social justice.
Yeah, just like Sophia said, we work on a lot of different projects. So some of the main projects we can see on this slide are Homework Helpers, which provides free tutoring to students ages 3 to 10 in 4 county libraries. There's Restrictive Covenant, which aims to enhance current curriculum around the local history of redlining. Caring Cards, which sends cards to encourage those in mental health and substance use recovery. We also work really closely with the OD Free Marin Youth Action Team, which provides education on overdose prevention. And there's a new event this year that's coming up called the One Stride at a Time 5K, which promotes hope, help, and recovery. That's on May 18th at McGinnis, and I'm going to have Gabby or Nancy drop those details in the chat so you guys can look more into all of that. Okay, next slide. So, why a youth resource guide? Next slide. So, based on a focus group of youth across the county, there are many differing feelings about what it's like to grow up in Marin, as we can see through this photo here. We can see that some people feel that it's inclusive and that has great higher education and a community, but other people can feel that there's pressure and class and race disparities and it's very competitive. So it really shows the complexity in the differing feelings that come with growing up in a place such as Marin. Next slide. So in further discussion with our peers, we heard what issues that young people are struggling with, such as anxiety, pressure, alcohol, drugs, academic stress, racial equity, and so much. So there's clearly a lot that the youth across the county are really dealing with. Next slide.
So in response to the issues that we found youth are facing in Marin, Find Your Way developed a printed resource guide that works hand in hand also with our digital resource guide to provide resources for youth here in Marin, and it is provided in English and Spanish. And now we are going to show you that resource guide. Sorry, could you make me co-host so I could share? Okay, perfect. So to get to our resource guide, you would search up Marin 9 to 25, and then head over to our website right here. And within that website, we have a Find Your Way tab, and we have a digital resource guide link right here. So you would click on that. Oh, sorry, the printed one right here. Which, so sorry, I don't know why it's taking so long to load. Sorry, 1 second. It normally is a lot quicker. So within this resource guide, as we're waiting for it to load, we found there was 4 main themes that were really important that we wanted youth to take away. I'm so sorry, this never happens.
It's okay. So maybe we can, maybe Gabby can pull it up. You
That
can
would
keep
be
talking.
great. This
Okay.
never happens. So
I know. I understand.
Nancy, you know. Here I will.
I can also share my screen and try to do it.
That would be great, Alex.
If you're not co-host, yes, I can do it. Just let me know. Okay, you got it. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. So Alex is here. And as you can see, she went to the Marin 925 website and then clicked on the printed version of our resource guide. And so we are gonna just do a quick overview of the important parts of the resource guide. So first, we wanted to highlight that teens here in Marin really go through various stages of mental health as youth. This can include various ups and downs and in-betweens of mental health. They may feel as if they are in a crisis, struggling, surviving, or thriving. And there's more info on the resource guide on that. Another thing that we really felt was important to highlight was telling youth that it was okay to ask for help. You can see that there are misconceptions about asking for help that many youth may feel when wanting to ask for help. However, we do destigmatize this when sharing the realities of asking for help as well. Next, we wanted to also highlight the importance of connections through youth. Many times when we're struggling, connecting with others is one of the best ways to take care of ourselves. And we felt that was really important for youth to hear. And then lastly, we wanted youth to be able to know how to support their fellow peers. So we like to first guide them in asking a fellow peer questions such as, how are you doing today? And then after listening and validating with something like, I understand how that could be challenging. And then if they are concerned for themselves or someone else that they know, they should really trust their instincts and contact a trusted adult or the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. And they could also let the friend know when doing this that, for example, this is a bigger than you and me. I think we need more help than I can provide. And then last, always have them check in with their fellow peer. They can do that by saying simply, I hope you're feeling better and I'm here for you.
Okay,
And
great.
then at
So,
the bottom, sorry.
okay, so the printed resource guide ultimately leads the youth to go to the digital resource guide, which we have a QR code for here. But you could also get there by going to, again, to marin9to25.org, and then under the Find Your Way tab, going to the digital resource guide. So the digital resource guide has a lot of criteria when it comes to choosing resources that are in this. We included some that are very youth friendly, and they have, most of them are no cost, and then a lot of them, or if not all of them, a parent doesn't need to be notified. It's completely anonymous. Okay, so if you were using the digital resource guide, you would click get started, and for this case, we're just going to say it's not an emergency and that we are needing help for someone else. So now we can see all the different tabs underneath the topics that you could find different resources for. So for right now, we're going to click on substance use and recovery, and then where to get help. And then we're also going to click under mental health, school wellness. So you can click multiple different items so you can see all the different resources that go for those different topics. And then we'll click next. And now we can see all the different resources that pop up to help with the 2 criteria that we clicked. So for example, we have the Marin City Health and Wellness, which we can see that where its location is in Marin City. And then, so we can click on that, and then we can see, okay, here's how we can access them through their website or through contacts. And then you can reach out to them through these different links. And yeah, so the digital resource guide is in English, and you can view it in Spanish by switching the browser, but we're currently working on getting it fully translated into Spanish at the moment. Okay. And that is our digital resource guide. I will stop sharing. And we'll have, yeah.
Okay, so for next steps, we would really appreciate if you shared our guide with your youth, whether that be your children or any youth you know. And please let us know in the chat if there are any places or people that you would think that would benefit from this training. We are rolling out a bunch of trainings in the fall, but just let us know if you have any ideas. And these trainings will be at various schools and organizations. And then lastly, please follow us on Instagram at Find Your Way.
Thank you. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can email Nancy at this email.
Thank you so much, Alex and Sophia, and your team helping you. Want to shout out Gabby and Nancy. Thank you so much for your help. I was kind of chuckling because I was like, it would not be a Let's Talk discussion without some type of tech snafu. So you are a part of the team for sure now. We're so happy that you all were able to share that. And that's an incredible guide. Thank you, Melissa, for dropping it in the chat. That was going to be my next question. So now we are at that wonderful time where we can field questions, we can share them with speakers. I also have to plug and remind you, because I did not earlier, and I apologize. We will be putting out a survey at the end to gather your feedback and all of that. So please make sure you stick around, or at least like catch that survey link at the end to let us know what you thought, things that we can maybe do moving forward. We will be raffling off DoorDash gift cards to a couple lucky folks. So please make sure you fill that out. So yeah, I think we will dive into our Q&A session. And I had one question that I imagine a lot of parents on this on our call are curious about, and this is for Alex and Sophia. There were some questions about Find Your Way, and just wanted to ask both of you how some young people in Marin and, you know, our numerous schools around the county might get involved in Find Your Way.
Yeah, for sure. Getting involved is super easy. You can email Nancy and you can just come to one of our meetings. They're super informative and pretty low commitment. And it's overall really a great experience that I would definitely recommend to all youth.
Thank you so much. I did want to ask another question, and this is maybe kind of more broadly around communicating around some of these topics. I think we know that mental health topics can be really difficult to start conversations around. We can have our own fears around it. We might not even know how to start a conversation. And so I wanted to ask to Alex and Sophia first, and then I have a follow-up question for Dr. Schmidt. But Alex and Sophia, do you have any recommendations of ways that parents might initiate these conversations with their teens in a way that feels comfortable and is creating a safe space in order to have some of these really important conversations?
Yeah, so I mean, I think first of all, and you kind of highlighted this, definitely making sure that the space like feels comfortable, whether that's like through body language. You could also use some of the prompts that we have in our guide to just start off that conversation, and those can be really helpful.
Great, thank you so much. I wanted to ask a question to Dr. Schmidt, and I just want to kind of name that this is, you know, a difficult topic around what I'm going to ask, actually. And so I think one of the topics that I think we as adults working with young people, you know, parents to young people, have some fear around is talking about suicide. And I didn't want to like bring our discussion down, but I think it's important that we talk about it. And so, Dr. Schmidt, I was curious, you know, what would you recommend, or how can parents talk to their kids about suicide or suicidal ideation in a way that is safe? Like, what recommendations might you share?
I'm so glad you asked that because I do think a lot of people feel like I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to give them the idea. And I can tell you, I ask every single kid that I work with at all ages about suicidal ideation whenever I meet them, and none of them have said, "Oh, that sounds like a good idea. I hadn't thought of that." So I promise you, if they weren't thinking of that, you're not going to give them the idea. But it is so important to talk about because most of us do feel this way at least once in our lives. And for young people, in as we talked about in those moments, it can feel like that is the worst and that it is never going to get better. And so, and then they have that lack of, the impulse control, right? So they might act on something that they might not act on at a different age. And so it's really important for us to be talking to our teenagers about that so they know that if they start to feel that way, can they have a plan of what they can do? And so ways that I talk about it with people is to just really name, I first just ask, have you ever felt like you wish you weren't here or like you wish you wanted to die? And then you kind of can go in from there, depending on what they say, to get more specifics on how they're feeling. And then I kind of explain where suicidal ideation comes from. It's usually rooted in a sense of overwhelm. And you could be overwhelmed by an emotion, you can be overwhelmed by a situation, right? There's fighting, I just can't take this anymore. And it's our brain saying, I can't go on like this. But in the moment, we kind of forget the like this, and it just feels more like I can't go on. And it feels like the only option is to die. And that's the moment that we want to make sure that we're bringing back that executive functioning and saying, okay, this is a signal to me that I'm overwhelmed. And looking around, what is it that's overwhelming me right now? Is it something I can fix, right? Can I actually leave the situation? Or is this something where I'm going to need some extra support to fix? And how do I get that support? And then reminding yourselves in the moment that I know it feels this way, but I know that this will pass and that I don't actually want to die. I do like to talk about, I'm sure you guys have seen those videos on YouTube of people picking up a car that they're stuck underneath. Our bodies will actually go to amazing lengths to not die. We don't want to die. But in those moments, it's more of this sense of, I can't go on like this. And so then coming up with a plan with your kiddo, if they do feel this way, what can they do? Who can they talk to? As Sophia and Alex just talked about, 988 is an incredible resource that we have. You can text or call that at any time, and that someone will answer and talk to you. And a lot of our kids like that because they maybe don't want to talk to a friend or someone who knows them because they don't want that judgment, right? And it's nice to have someone who they're not looking eye to eye in to talk about this with, and they can make sure that they're safe. And, if that person can be you, that would be fantastic. And talk about if they do ever feel that way, they can talk to you and that you will help and you won't judge. And so then what's the key message here is that most of us will feel this way at least once in their life. And so if you feel this way, what is your plan for what to do so that you don't act on it? It is okay to have these feelings. It doesn't mean you're crazy, but it's not okay to act on them. We need to keep you here. That's how I would talk about it.
Thank you so much. That is so incredibly helpful. I think also just to normalize that, we all experience it. Oh my gosh, I cannot talk. Uh, we all experience high levels of overwhelm, and like it makes sense that you would be resisting that experience and want to find some way. But I love the way that you gave us examples of how to start those conversations, things that you can talk through with a teen to make sure that they do feel safe and are understanding that this, like the root of that experience. I think with that, I have a question actually for all of our speakers, that as a parent, if you maybe notice that your teen is struggling and could really use some extra support, either through a professional at school or at a community organization or something. I'm curious what you all think of ways that you could approach the teen and invite them to that without, creating kind of a difficult scenario where maybe the teen feels kind of backed into a corner, or just outright refuses or is fearful of that experience. And so I'm just wondering, maybe Dr. Schmidt and Alex and Sophia, if you have recommendations of how you even kind of begin that conversation of encouraging someone to seek help or at least speak with someone else.
I would actually love to hear what Alex and Sophia say, because I think they're going to have the more accurate response to that.
Okay, cool. I can try my best to answer. I think that it's really important that a parent knows that their child isn't suffering for a reason. Sometimes things, or they could be, but sometimes things just happen and they can't control it. And it's better to support and be there to just fully support your child instead of trying to give excuses and just being there for them. And sometimes people don't want to hear solutions. They just want someone to listen to them.
Yeah, I would completely agree with what Alex just said. I think just adding on, just making like sure that you're not judging them and really just there to support them. Literally, like Alex just said, really just, being maybe a shoulder for them to like cry on, or just for them to be able to talk to, without hearing a way to fix their problem, and when maybe suggesting on to like talk with someone else, just I think really normalizing it is super helpful. And because there can be some stigma around going to someone else to talk to, and it really is a helpful resource that people should use.
I think those are right on. The only thing I would add is that, as a parent talking to your child, you might put out there, I know that sometimes I'm not the person you're going to want to talk to about this. And so I'd love to find you someone that you could talk to about this. And they don't have to tell me everything, and you can have your own private space to talk about it. And sometimes when you're presenting it that way, as opposed to, I think you need help, there's something wrong with you, that's never going to work. But it's more, I want you to have someone else to talk to besides me in case it's too hard to talk to me. That might leave it more open.
Thank you all. I think those are such incredible tips of normalizing, inviting them into conversation, also not immediately providing solutions. And Alex, I really appreciated your comment around sometimes they just want, they need someone to just listen. And I think that's so powerful. And I know in situations when I've, as a former teacher myself, in chatting with some of my teen students, asking the question of like, what support do you need right now? Do you want to be problem solving, or do you want just someone to listen? And I will be that person, so can connect you with other people. So thank you so much. I think I think those are all really incredibly helpful tips around difficult conversations. And I think we kind of keep coming back to that. I did also want to ask Alex and Sophia, just kind of backing out a little bit. I'm thinking about like this incredible resource guide that you all have created and continue to work on and refine. And so I wanted to like zoom out a little bit more and ask maybe both of you like how you got involved in Find Your Way and what your experiences have been in rolling out this resource. And maybe if you've gotten any feedback from other young people, if their experiences with it. We'd just love to hear a little more about your time with Find Your Way.
Yeah, I could start. So I first got involved last summer with the summer internship, which is just starting back up again. And then I heard about Find Your Way and I was super interested, and I joined probably in around August, and I just really loved what they were doing, and just been consistently going and trying to do as much as I can. And rolling out the resource guide and trying to push it out has been a really good process. And I think it's really good to hear everyone's feedback on it, as well as just trying to get it out to as many people as possible so that they know that this exists and that it is a resource for everyone and it's available to everyone so that they can use it.
Yeah, I mean, Alex, kind of basically, we had very similar experiences. We both started with Find Your Way through the BOS summer intern program later in August. And I've had really similar experiences when sharing the resource guide. It's been a great experience, and the feedback has been great. I think it's amazing to see people in Marin realizing how many great resources we have here and how easily they can get connected to it. And yeah, it's just been overall a great experience.
Thank you so much. Dr. Schmidt, I had a question come in that I thought maybe you could help us either learn a little more about or find resources for. A question came in around a rise in eating disorders, specifically among young boys, and maybe specifically using steroids for muscles, or just like as you're experiencing development, and then also issues around body image and wanting to look a certain way. Or do you have any kind of thoughts, or are you noticing any trends or specific ways even that parents might support a young person that they're maybe noticing or having kind of disordered eating habits?
Thank you for that. Yes, we are seeing an increase in disordered eating habits across boys and girls. And it's, I kind of alluded to that a little bit before. It makes sense because part of it is about trying to control something that you can when there's things around you that you can't. And the one thing that we are 100% in control of is our body. And so it fits that there's a rise with everything that we've been through in the last few years. I would say that if you're concerned about that with your child, that I would make an appointment with their pediatrician right away. There are a lot of very real and dangerous health effects to not eating or binging or various different types of disordered eating, and we do want to get them checked out for their health immediately. And then from there, your pediatricians are going to be a really good resource to help connect them to the right services.
Thank you so much, Dr. Schmidt. I wanted to send a question back to our youth speakers, Alex and Sophia. Another question that came up for us. Dr. Schmidt obviously mentioned the mental health crisis, something new that is being talked about not only in research, and it's becoming a relatively hot topic, obviously in terms of like the rates that we're seeing, the experiences that we're hearing. And so Alex and Sophia, we were curious if you maybe are noticing that on your own campus, and if you're noticing that peers maybe are having a hard time, and any thoughts that you might have around what might be contributing to that.
Yeah, I can go first and then Alex if you want to share after. I think I've definitely noticed an increase in stress and just overall mental health struggles. I mean, both Alex and I are juniors, and I think that that can be a very stressful time, especially in high school with, harder classes and thinking about college. Um, and so I think that definitely mental health issues are prevalent, at least here at Redwood. Also, so Alex and I are part of AIM, which does actually research mental health, and we found a lot of correlations between school and teen mental health struggles. And so I think that that is definitely causing some of them.
Yeah, I totally agree with Sophia. I've definitely noticed a major increase in mental health issues in my peers, and I think it is important that people are talking about it, which is really good. That, for us to even know that it's going on is a good thing. We're recognizing that it is a problem, and that's honestly the first step into helping fix this, is just recognizing that, okay, there's so many of us that are dealing with this, and it's really it's so important that everyone realizes that it's happening. And that's just really the beginning of what can be done about it.
Thank you so much, Alex and Sophia. Alex, you made the perfect segue into my last question, I think maybe for the evening. I think especially with the weight of the discussion we've had tonight, we've touched a lot of different things. We've talked about really difficult concepts as well. And so I think especially with that, I love to end on the question of just what gives you hope when we're thinking about youth mental health. Alex, you kind of mentioned it in that like there's an active discussion around it, which is amazing. And it's not only normalizing the experience, but we all are so fortunate to be in this community with so many incredible resources at our fingertips. And so kind of want to put it back to our speakers to help us leave on a high note and help us leave tonight feeling hopeful of just what gives you hope when we are talking about youth mental health.
I can go first. I think that definitely, like Alex was saying, knowing that there's, support around, whether that be resources in the resource guide, or various adults that I can talk to, along with just maybe like being with my friends and maybe destigmatizing the conversation around mental health, really gives me more hope.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that the increasing adult awareness of this issue is also very important, and that really gives me hope that a lot of adults are really coming in to support us and they're, backing all these different programs that help with youth mental health, and that really gives me hope.
And I would turn it right back around and say that it's the youth that give me hope. I mean, I think the ones you've seen tonight here are beyond impressive. And the fact that programs like 9 to 25 are creating things by youth for youth, that is what gives me real hope for the future. You're not waiting for adults to come in and help. You're doing it yourselves and doing a better job. And I'm really hopeful of this next generation and all that you guys have to bring.
Thank you all. If I might add, I think the fact that we're all here tonight, even just the discussion between the adults and young people, like that gives me hope also. And so I think we're so fortunate not only to have had such incredible speakers tonight, but to be actively in conversation and knowing that we have resources, that we can lean on each other. I think I loved Dr. Schmidt in your presentation. You said like, you're not alone. There's so many people we can lean on, not only in getting support for ourselves, but for young people that we care about. So thank you to all of our speakers. This was such an incredibly powerful discussion. And we're so lucky to have all of you. Tonight's